Yes, indeed. Very welcome along to OTB Football Saturday here on News Talk. Shane Hannon with you through until 5 p.m. this evening for the next couple of hours. As per usual, talking football brought to you by Sky. Watch every live Premier League game this season on Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports. We've got St James's Park in front of us here. Newcastle United 0, Aston Villa 0. A fairly interesting game. It promises to be. A little earlier on, it was Leicester City 0, Manchester City 1. So City back on top for now. At least a lovely free kick from Kevin De Bruyne. Delighted to be joined. We'll have Dan McDonnell a little bit later on as Newcastle fire a header just over the bar. But we have Johnny Ward, the renowned, esteemed broadcaster and journalist in the studio.
Just gets better every week,
doesn't it? Broadcaster and journalist just wasn't enough. I had to up the ante a little bit. How are you, Johnny?
How are you getting on?
Keeping well. And we've got on the line the former Premier League footballer and Republic of Ireland international Damien Delaney as well. Afternoon, Damo.
Hi lads, how's it going?
Keeping well. Yeah, it's a busy one. It's a busy day's Premier League action. Johnny, you were watching the action of the King Power a little bit earlier on. Man City getting the win, so 3 points sealed, but they weren't the Man City that we've become used to watching. Erling Haaland wasn't on the pitch, injured, so maybe that had a part to play.
Yeah, it was interesting to see how much their price went out when Haaland didn't start. It was kind of it's funny how the markets react to these things because without going on about it, they're very, very accurate, and Haaland it was essentially deemed that Leicester had a chance, which they kind of didn't really have, or certainly had a better chance, and that's how it panned out really. City huffed and puffed a lot in the first half, but to be fair to Leicester, who sat in, Leicester's biggest problem, I'm definitely interested in Damien's view on this. To me, having watched a bit of them lately, the biggest problem is Vardy's lack of pace now. So it's just that he's had such an amazing career, but there was one moment in the first half, I think, when, I don't know, was he up against Stones? He was kind of put through and on the break. And generally, City didn't look that confident defensively, I thought a better team would have caused them more problems. But Vardy was put through and he just didn't have the pace, so he kind of turned back, and I think he played it over to Maddison or whatever. But if that's a problem for Brendan Rodgers, because Leicester are playing better, they were pretty good against Leeds the last time I saw them, and they actually looked like they were relatively comfortable. And then De Bruyne just, I mean, what do you say, like Tekers out of this world. And then moments later, Tielemans, arguably an even more difficult technique on the volley. Like, the only thing that was missing from it was a little bit central, so it was Ederson could kind of save it, but it was such an amazing strike off the bar, and thereafter the game sort of fizzled out a little bit. But I think if Manchester City didn't have Haaland, you would see some vulnerabilities in them today and in general, but I think for Leicester, Vardy's probably becoming an issue now.
Do you subscribe to that, Damien? Like, as a defender, I guess, even though Jamie Vardy's a big name, when you see someone coming like that at the tail end of their career, when the pace is maybe lacking a little bit, it's a dream for a defender.
Yeah, I mean, I won't say it's a dream because he can still finish, and if you create chances for him, he will score. It's just that he no longer has that 30-40 yard sprint in him anymore, and he was one of the best at it. The year Leicester won the league, and a couple of years either side of that as well, he could occupy a back four on his own, just stand on the halfway line. I remember playing against it, Danny Drinkwater just spinning balls blind round the corner and behind. I mean, he didn't even look, and Jamie Vardy knew it was coming, and Jamie Vardy was on his bike early, and he was quick, and he was lethal. But obviously time doesn't wait for anybody, and he has slowed down a little bit now, and they've probably tried to replace him with Daka. They probably try to get like for like there, but you're never going to get another Jamie Vardy. And if you do, it's going to cost you a hell of a lot of money. They've gotten good service out of him, and he's obviously a good lad, good character, good leader in the changing room. And I think the club have to be loyal to a degree to him, because he could have left several times over the last number of years. There was a lot of suitors for him, and he always said he wanted to stay at Leicester, and he did. So I think there's a certain amount of loyalty should be repaid there for him. I'm not saying he should start every week, but I'm pretty sure he has a lot to give still, just not what he used to give.
I think the boy Faze that they signed, he joined in September. I hadn't heard from him. I think he's a Belgian lad. He just looks, he's really given them solidity at the back. And I think, in fairness to Brendan Rodgers, Leicester seem to be kind of getting their act together a little bit, and maybe the Vardy thing is interesting. Definitely without Haaland, though, there is that. I'd say even mentally for defenders, they can kind of think, well, at least he's not here.
Gives them a boost.
Gives you a boost, yeah, because Grealish went down, looked for a penalty sort of in the first half, was given for a corner, but in general they didn't create much, and Leicester looked like they kind of they were very deep, but they looked like they could manage them. And in fairness, it did take a worldly of a free kick, silly free kick to give away. Other than that, I'm not sure they would have scored.
Yeah, it's one of those, like, the psychology behind playing someone like Erling Haaland. Like, Damien, you often see, like, sometimes defenders want to test themselves against some of the top strikers, but a lot of defenders would have looked at that fixture at the start of the year and gone, right, the 2 games we play Man City, I mean, facing Erling Haaland, yes, it's a challenge and something you want to come up against, but there's a little bit of fear there as well.
Absolutely. I mean, there's fear with every centre forward in the Premier League. They're all top class players. But with him, I think you'd look forward to playing against him. You'd want to play against him because everybody wants to find out how good they actually are. And obviously, if you come up against him, you're going to find out pretty quickly. He's a one-off talent. You know, I said Jamie Vardy was one of a kind, and you probably could replace him with enough money, but I'm not sure you could replace an Erling Haaland. I don't think there's another player out there that's been like him. When you look over the last 20 years, and I don't think in the next 20 years you're going to find one either. I mean, he's just a physical specimen, quick, strong, good at every attribute, can finish. But you'd want to play against him. You absolutely would. Now, you might be a little bit embarrassed, but, you know, that's okay. I think, you know, most players will go home after a game and think, well, I did my best. It's just that I came up against a top class player. But, you know, if you have a good game against him, you keep him quiet and you can, you know, I thought Mats Hummels the other night in the Champions League had an incredibly good game against him. I remember listening to something about the first game at the Etihad where the Dortmund manager said he was going to play Hummels because he knew him so well from training against him and had an intimate knowledge of him, as opposed to, I think it was Sula who was just signed. So that's why Hummels was started against him, and you could see that Hummels, you know, training against him day in, day out, you tend to learn, you know, his favourite side, his tendencies, his movement, his body movement. When's he going to shoot? When's he going to have an extra touch? But obviously that's training against him every day. But, you know, if I was still playing, I almost certainly would love to have had a go off him. And you either, you know, have a good game or you learn something.
There's been an early goal, lads, at the Amex Stadium, the Graham Potter derby, Brighton and Hove Albion against Chelsea. Who's it for, Alan Lewis?
It's Brighton 1, Chelsea 0, and Brighton fans booing their former manager Graham Potter before the game have nothing but cheers. Now they've taken an early lead in this one after twice having the ball cleared off the line by Thiago Silva. Leandro Trossard has given them the lead. A wonderful run by Matoma into the box, passed it to Trossard, some quick feet to take it around the goalkeeper and then slide it into the net. It's Brighton 1, Chelsea 0.
Ah, Jesus, lads. Brighton fans booing Graham Potter before the match.
Stupid game, isn't it?
What
was he supposed to do? Like, oh no, I've been unbelievably good for Brighton. I've been a really loyal servant, but I'm not going to take the Chelsea job.
That is ridiculous. I mean, Damien, what I know it's football and maybe there's a bit of hashtag banter around the whole thing, but it's a bit ridiculous that they'd boo Potter.
Yeah, but look, I don't think there's any malice in it. I don't think Brighton fans have any malice in them, really. They're not a bad old bunch. And I think obviously he's their former manager and it's just a bit of banter, or, you know, maybe just trying to have an influence over him. You know, he never actually won anything at Brighton, so I can understand if a manager went away and won an FA Cup or got him in the Champions League, there might be some sort of gratefulness. But I suppose when you look at it, he did an incredibly good job there, but he just, you know, did what he was supposed to do, I think, really. That's
football, I suppose. I just want to hear from Pep Guardiola. He was speaking after the match earlier on. So Leicester City 0, Manchester City 1, as we said, at full time. Kevin De Bruyne with that free kick just after half time, with 49 minutes or so on the clock. So he was speaking after the game and gave his thoughts on what happened.
Pep, what did you make of that win? You had to dig in at the end, didn't you?
Yes, yeah, definitely. It was, yeah. They changed a little bit, so... real difficult game, because... attack with 10 players there so deep is not easy. It's so difficult. We concede few. And after we scored a goal, like we started really well the second half. They continued to do in that way, and of course said, okay, you attack or you wait. What do you have to do? And the moment when they change the rhythm, you have in a low rhythm, because we play in low rhythm all the game because they play in this way. And of course, in Premier League, at the last minute, when you are in that situation, it always is difficult. But massive victory for us.
And it's a great team performance, but there were two outstanding moments. Kevin De Bruyne's free kick was a special one.
Yeah, definitely. He's back.
He's back. Because you said this week you were looking for more from him, giving him a little nudge, encouraging him to play.
I was not playing good the last games.
Was he playing good today?
Yeah, but amazing. He knows it. Yeah. He's a player. We need that dynamic, had to be free, and the conditions, but it's difficult. So it's back five. Bardi is already with a holding midfielder. 4 players in the middle that close to the back five in the 18-yard box. It's literally not a space. Can do in transition and a movement to second position, but we are not exceptional team for the runners from behind or runners for the second action. So that's why be patient. Don't get frustrated. Don't concede the counterattacks. Not give free kick to corners like Maddison is a master in this position, but we defend really well. And and at the end, when we should keep the ball, we were of course tired. They increased the rhythm. We were playing in our low rhythm, and that's why we suffer.
And when they did get through, Ederson, a fantastic save from that Tielemans.
Yeah, definitely.
That changes it.
Definitely.
And how Alaves has got big boots to fill with Haaland out today. How do you think he did? Julian, yeah.
Yeah, it's no space. He moved really well, but if you put the balls there, it's difficult. When they defend in this position, it's so difficult. So for all the strikers, who have been when we play at home against Bournemouth, Erling played there and didn't touch one ball. Play I think 4 or 6 touches. So it's really difficult in transitions. At the end, when they open, we had a little bit more chances. The transition from Kevin, but yeah, Leicester away is always complicated. We came here with the best moment of them. And as a good result, when you play Saturday 12:30 and you win, now we're just waiting what the rest is going to do. We have 2 games left in the Premier League, 2 at home. We have to try to do our job, and after we see what happens.
Job done today.
Thank you so much.
Pep.
Yeah, Pep Guardiola there speaking to BT Sport after the away win for Manchester City today, 1-0 at Leicester City. That puts them back a point ahead of Arsenal. Of course, Arsenal in action tomorrow. I mean, the free kick from Kevin De Bruyne was special. Damien, who's the best free kick taker you've ever seen? Like we've probably had the conversation before, but it's something that when you see a goal like that happen, you're like, Jesus. The technique it takes to whip it that close over the wall and get it in off the post as well is something else.
Yeah, I used to always hate when we used to play against Spurs, Christian Eriksen.
Right.
He's got an incredible set piece delivery. Like he gets enough pace on it to maintain its height. It comes in very, very flat. You know, every defender wants a ball to come in. You want it to be looping. You want it to be up in the air. Not a lot of pace on it. So you get a good amount of time to pick up the flight of the ball and maybe go and meet it. But he puts enough pace on it, and it comes in very, very flat, and it's very, very hard then to make a judgment to go and attack it, or do you hold? And whenever we used to play Spurs, especially on the wide free kicks, especially the in-swingers, you used to just put them in so flat, and then you kind of get this thing in your head where you think, if you're in a zone, you kind of think the guy in front of you is going to get it, because you think, oh, that's going to be quite low, he's going to get it, and all of a sudden the pace is still on it, and it reaches you, and it kind of gets on you very, very quickly. So he was a tough one, and I played in that game in Upton Park where Dimi Payet hit that amazing free kick over the. I was in the wall for that one. So
right, I was just about to bring that one up, but I didn't realise you were standing in the wall.
Yeah, and I think as it was going overhead, I thought that's good, because I've said this before. Whenever you're in a wall and someone hits a free kick, you always get a feeling as it's going over the wall, whether it's whether it's going to be close or not. Like you just know. And that one, till the day I die, will say I thought it was going into the top row of that Trevor Brookins stand, to be honest with you, because it was hit so bad. But it just dipped at the very end, and no one could quite believe it went in.
That defied the laws of physics. That when you watch it back now, you think straight away, oh, that's going over the bar, and just you see professional footballers, they're obviously able to dip a football, but like that was ridiculous.
It is. Like the last Pats game was that Chris Forrester had 2 goals at more or less the same technique as De Bruyne today. How would you explain it, Damo? Because it does have to do with the footballs of today rather than a few years ago, where I think the ball's kind of moving out to the extent that you can almost like stud it. Ronaldo tries it a lot as well. Like it's kind of a unique technique.
Yeah, it's like in snooker, if you want to create some backspin on the ball, you hit down into the back of the cue ball. They do the same thing, and like you said there, the balls today with the panels that they have on them, they're set up in a way that they're supposed to be kind of unbalanced in the air when the airflow is going over it, and that's why you hear a lot of people saying that it moves in the air, and then you always hear these ex-pros complaining, going, "Of course it moves. The ball's supposed to move," but you're like, it's different. Sometimes there are people have shots and they're coming at you, and you think it's going to hit you, and it does just have a little dip or a swerve, or it fluctuates in the air a little bit. And that's the way they design them, because they want goalkeepers to not be able to pick up the flight of it. They want it to dip at the last minute, because everybody wants to see world-class goals going in. So they do fly differently, those balls, but not to the extent of what Dimi Payet did that day. That was, I maintained something hit it in the air. I had to have because it was going over, and it was rising, and then all of a sudden it just changed direction and went straight down, almost at the exact same angle. But look, that's why goalkeepers often punch quite a lot, because you always hear as well a lot of people saying, "Oh, just catch it." But it's tough for a goalkeeper if the ball's flying at you, and even if it moves half an inch and you think it's going right in the palm of your hands, it all of a sudden hits your fingers and you spill it. So that's why they kind of clench their fists and put them together, because they want to make sure they get some contact on it. And that's why you always hear old goalkeepers saying, "Oh, you can catch that, it's easy." But sometimes they're a little bit difficult. They do move, an inch or half an inch in the air, and obviously if you're trying to catch it as a goalkeeper, that can be quite significant.
Type of thing you try in a 5-side with Jermaine Genius.
Jesus, yeah, that's you never lose it. Like I was over in London there, Damien, on Thursday. It was an interview with Jermaine Genius, but we had a 7-a-side thing on a rooftop in Nine Elms in London before the interview, and professional footballers don't lose it. Luckily, I was on Jermaine's team, but he said to me he hadn't really been playing football. He doesn't meet up with his mates and play much, but that's the thing. 7 or 8 years he hasn't really played football. He said he still obviously goes to the gym and stuff, but Damien, you never lose that touch, the creative side of it. Just the first touch, you can just tell, and even the aggression as well in the tackle. You're like, well, he's a former Premier League footballer.
Damien had lost it before he'd even finished his career.
Johnny, I was just about to say that. You never really. I play over 35s now, and I lost it a long time ago. No, but obviously that's ingrained in you, because you spend 20, 25 years, ingraining something into your brain, and just you never lose those instincts, and that's what it becomes, an instinct and a feel for it. Obviously, just because you can play on a rooftop in a 5-a-side, but then obviously, I even me playing over 35s, I can't, the lung capacity of a 3-year-old at this. So that aside, you still want to get your eye in and have a feel for it. But I understand what you mean.
That'd be a good thing for our listeners and viewers to text in, who's the best player you've played Astro with.
Yes, because 53106 or comment on the YouTube, Facebook or Twitter.
Mine would be
Damien Delaney. Have you ever played with Damien?
I actually haven't. I've played with ex-internationals. I've played with really, really good players, ex-Premier League, and by a long way the best was Owen Garvin.
Owen Garvin, right?
Yeah, good show.
It was just...
What made him, technically good?
Obviously it's levels or whatever, and, Garv was essentially a championship player at best. Now, I would argue, talent-wise, he was better than that, but he'd be in a corner and it'd be an impossible shot in the black, and getting the cue ball right to where he wanted to be. And you'd almost, after playing with him a bit, you're like, he's just going to do this. I'm not sure how he's going to do it. He's going to find some sort of a dink, or he's just going to put the ball through my legs. There's some days where you're just like, oh my God, natural ability. We have to get to play with Damo then.
Jesus, yeah.
Oh, Don, honestly, trust me, you're doing well there with Garves, because I played with Garves at a couple of clubs, Palace and Ipswich, and he had that Matt Letizia laid back, natural, God-given talent. He could pick a pass as well, but Garves was one of those players. He was always able to do things at his own pace, and no one could ever do anything about it. So I could imagine even now, Garves would still be, the same level, because that's just who he is as a player.
There's been a second goal at the Amex Stadium. Back to that conversation in one second. But who's it for? Alan Lewis.
Brighton and Hove Albion 2, Chelsea 0, and Brighton have doubled their advantage. And Graham Potter, the Chelsea boss, returning to the Amex, an absolute shell shock of a game so far. It's an own goal from Ruben Loftus-Cheek, a left-footed corner swung in. Loftus-Cheek stuck out a leg, but he could only divert it into his own net. It's Brighton 2, Chelsea 0.
Wow. Whoa, Damo, what's happening here? I mean, this is the thing. It's awkward for Graham Potter. It's like when you go back and you're expecting, the big man with the turtleneck now and the new haircut looks the part. He's had a glow up on the sideline for Chelsea, Graham Potter, but not going too well for him so far.
No, but he would have known this was coming, and he would have been emphasising this all week to his players. You just know that him going back, it's going to create a special atmosphere in the stadium. The players, the Brighton players, are going to have an extra bit of motivation, that extra couple of percent. And he would have been emphasising that to his players. You got to be ready. You got to be ready. That they're going to be gunning for this, not for you, but probably for me, because they want to ruin, my day and stuff like that. So I think he'd be pretty disappointed because it sounds like Brighton, I'm not watching it, but it sounds like Brighton have started like a train and Chelsea just haven't been able to live with them. So difficult one, but I wouldn't put it past Chelsea. Once that game settles and that start, that extra 5% that Brighton seem to be playing with, once that kind of lulls, you'd expect Chelsea to come back into it and maybe get a draw or something out of this.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on that one. So 22 minutes on the clock now. Brighton Hove Albion 2, Chelsea 0 at the Amex. I should point out, lads, I did score the other night on the 5-a-side.
They're set up by Jermaine.
Well, it was actually the pass previous to the assist was from Jermaine. He didn't score, so I don't know if that means I'm on Premier League level, lads. But
it does affect.
I'm gonna like by default. I think
it was a rooftop game. Is it?
Rooftop game. It was lovely views out over that area of London and Battersea area.
Lovely. Are you a fan of Gemma Dunleavy? She'd be like your sister, an up and coming Irish artist. She's got a really catchy song called "Shouting Up the Flats from the Rooftop."
Right. I was wondering what the link was there.
First thing that came into my head, but playing Astro on the roof. That must be pretty cool.
Lovely, cool kind of London chill.
There's no rose ed. It's like literally hit it like
there's a net. Thankfully, there's a net on the roof, so you can't possibly do any damage. I remember playing a media 5-a-side a few years ago, and we were up against the League of Ireland Legends team, and I remember, like, I'm reasonably tall. I remember bumping into Delaney Co on the pitch, and we went shoulder to shoulder, and it was like, the best way to describe it is like hitting a force field. We were like this. There was no move. Like, I tried my best to move him, and I don't know, was it a centre of gravity? He just knew how to shield the ball, but I actually felt like I shouldered a brick wall.
He was a remarkable player, and again, he was playing League of Ireland at a time when got an Irish cap or two, definitely got one cap, but he was playing at a time when the league was there was a good bit of money around and we were kind of attracting some good players, but had this amazing ability to shoot with no backlift, like no back lift whatsoever, and like so strong, like a bullet, like kind of type, not massively tall, just like that kind of stocky build or whatever, but deceptively quick as well.
Yeah,
hell of a player for Bows in the Roddy Collins days.
We've got a few texts on this as well in terms of the best players that people have played with. 53106 and comment as well on the YouTube or Facebook or Twitter, as I said. Best Astro pitch I've played with, Cathal McGrath, the Irish Messi. That's probably an in-joke. Played with Stephen Ireland, absolutely frightening, says one texter. I can imagine. I'd say technically
what
speaking.
About his playing ability?
Well, yeah, I'm sure that's great too. Al Finucane at 60, still brilliant.
Yeah. Big Al, yeah, ex League of Ireland legend.
Bit of a legend for Limerick and Waterford and a few other clubs. Adrian and Laois says, lads, play with Laois hurler Paddy Purcell. Speed and strength is unbelievable and a shot like a rocket. We're thinking of banning inter-county hurlers now on a Tuesday night. Now I'm 46 as well.
Shane Keegan says a lot of these Laois lads, like, there are a lot of very good footballers in Laois,
built differently,
just playing other sports. Yeah.
Do you still play a bit of ball, Damien? Or like?
Yeah, I did a bit of I played a bit of over 35s last year, and then I kind of the league has started already. I think I played one game, but I just stay out of the way. Like, I suppose ultimately, like, you just want to get a sweat on in the winter, and the beats going to a gym. So if you go in there like maybe once a week or once every 2 weeks, it's good just to get a run around to get a sweat on, but I'd just be terrified of getting injured or falling over, or you know what I mean. So I kind of stay out of the way and just kind of play one touch and get what I need out of it and move on.
There's definitely like a show about Astro, and a lot of lads can ring in about the idiosyncrasies of it all. Like, I'm involved in a few different games, some of which I've left, but like some of the lads I brought to the game now play other games with sort of half of the same lads, and there's an Irish Times game on the Wednesday, and a lot of the guys there like are actors or like journalists, and so you'd be kind of going in for tackling this lads like
a famous broadcaster.
What did I see you in TV in again? Like,
yeah.
Were you in, like, what was that again? It was a long time ago. Were you in Father Ted? And he probably was. And and then the passage of time, and everything starts slowing down, and it gets quite. It's an existential struggle at times as well, and then Owen Garvin comes along.
Well, Father Ted, of course, had the over 75s.
I imagine ever closer to that. Like Father Romeo Cincini, that's the name that's been given to some of my rivals who've played well against me of late.
You've still got time, Damien. You've got 40 years. You'll still be eligible for the over 75s, so you can keep her lit.
I think that was my over 35 days will be behind me soon. I'm just terrified of getting injured to ruin my golf. That's it.
Yeah. How are you getting much time for that? Like, how are you finding the golfing at the minute?
Yeah, good, man. Really good. Playing an awful lot. I hope my missus isn't listening, but she complains a lot. But yeah, I played an awful lot of golf and got the bug for that. So that's it, really.
Do you know that people like, and it's not all footballers, but I guess to get to the top level of any sport, you nearly need to have a an addictive personality, and it's not just something, it's not just the realm of sports people. Other people can have addictive personalities once they get their teeth into a topic or a book or something that they are obsessed with it for a while. Was it kind of like that for you? Like once you retired, hung up the boots, took up golf, and now you want to give it your absolute all to be as good a player as you can?
Yeah, I mean, look, man, I'm not going on tour anytime soon, so I do understand that it is just a game, and I do enjoy it, but I enjoy the challenge of it. It's an incredibly frustrating game, but also incredibly rewarding. You can learn so much, and especially when you get down low in a handicap and you start playing well, you realise there's so many different facets to the game, and try to stay on top of all of it at once is so hard. And you're talking there about addictive personalities. You have to have a real perseverance, and a willingness to learn and get better, because golf just is forever frustrating, and you fix one thing and then something else goes, and so trying to get down low and stay low is very, very hard.
The lads will have to get you in Golf Weekly at some point. There's a thing there, like ex sports people like Brian O'Driscoll as well, man who loves his bit of golf.
Yeah, I've never been invited to that. Joe, I play with Joe quite a bit actually.
Right.
On Thursdays when I'm up in Dublin for the Virgin stuff. So I usually play with Joe.
How do you compare?
Yeah, Joe's a good player. Joe's not a bad player. Yeah, he's hits it quite well. He hits it a mile actually, surprisingly.
He's in good shape, Joe. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I played him last year and he was flimsy, and then this year he's hitting it far. Like there's definitely some performance enhancing drugs or something.
Bryson DeChambeau probably in the gym the whole time or something.
There's something there, definitely illegal. I'd want to check the settings.
Hopefully Joe isn't a litigious type, because I mean, off the ball may never actually exist after some of those comments. Flimsy as well. That's a.
He was flimsy, but now he's bulked up a little bit, and he hits it like. And I checked the settings on his driver one day because I thought he's definitely because he's packed on a few yards. In fairness, he used to be way behind me, but he's not a million miles away now. So basically, yeah, that's just me and Joe and a couple of other guys play golf on a Thursday in Dublin.
What are you playing off at the minute, Demo?
3.
Jesus, right. You're properly good then. Yeah, that's quality.
Not really, but yeah.
Don't play it down. You're too modest. I remember interviewing Sean Murphy before, the former world snooker champion, and he lives in Dublin now, but he was talking about the fact that he is he's the only person in history who's hit a hole-in-one in golf, a 147 in snooker, and a 9-darter in darts. So he
sounds like Kim Jong-un or something. He's
unbelievable. So we know he's he knows
he's dictator. He's bang bang like
dinner party guests. We know obviously he's a quality snooker player, Sean. But he fancies himself in the darts as well. He's hit 9-darter and he plays off scratch in golf. He actually entered a couple of Open tournaments, I think, over in England. Tried to qualify for the British Open, but I don't know if he succeeded. But I think he actually said, he was asked which is the most difficult of those 3 skills, and his feeling was the 147 in snooker is actually the hardest.
Well, a hole-in-one you could. Yeah, hole-in-one is one shot. So you could obviously fluke it or whatever. 9-dart finish is 9 darts. 147 is how many shots?
Yes, you've got 15 reds, 15 blacks, and then the 6 colours. So you've got,
fair
36
enough.
shots.
Albeit as a professional snooker player, it's still an interesting point to make.
Yeah. Well, he's got the insight to kind of know, I suppose. It's one of those things. Damien, just before we leave the Leicester Man City match, I just wanted to touch on the Premier League sack race. I'm looking at the minute. I was going to touch on Brendan Rodgers. He's actually only the 3rd favourite for the sack, 7-1. Hassan Hüttl 6-1, and Jesse Marsh is the 8-15 favourite. Rodgers, they lost today, but I mean, you're going to get a little bit of leeway when you lose to Man City potentially. Yeah,
look, I mean, he started off not great, really, really poor, and everyone thought he was going to get sacked, but they stuck with him, and you got to give him his dues as well. I mean, they sold a lot of players, and they didn't really sign anyone, if anyone, I think, if memory serves me correct, only signed anyone. So I suppose the owners have to recognise that as well, and believe in him. He's obviously a good manager. He's very, very good, and he seems to be dragging Leicester away. And I suppose their aim this year is just to stay up. I don't know why the financial situation has changed at Leicester, and I don't know why the transfer strategy has changed, but there'll be a reason behind it. Hopefully in January they'll give him some funds. But he survived it, and I think that's about right. I think Jesse Marsh is probably going to be the next to go. Hassan Hüttl is just lodged in there in the top 3, isn't he? He's always seems to be on the edge, and then he digs out a result somewhere along the way, and kind of we forget about him for a while again. So I think Brendan Rodgers has done really well just to cling in there, and he's done well to start inching Leicester away. And I know a defeat, you can never take any positives from a defeat, but I mean, losing 1-0 to Man City, you got something to go back in the change room to your players with there and say, hey, look, guys, you played well today. And then Monday morning, training's a bit better, you know.
Jesse Marsh is an interesting. Like, if Leeds get hammered tonight, just reading up today, like their XP and their XG, if you believe in that, they should be a good bit higher. I think Leeds' issue is that Bamford isn't scoring.
Yeah.
So Bamford, he didn't even start during the week, I think, but he's probably not playing that badly, but he's just not scoring, and it's not like his legs are gone. So if he can start scoring goals, I actually think Liverpool, I wouldn't be banking on them winning that game. I think Leeds probably are a bit better than they're shown, and Marsh would argue that they're getting nowhere near the points that they deserve, but definitely under pressure.
Yeah, we have to take an ad break shortly. We might return to Leeds Liverpool then after that. Just to bring you up to date on the action in the Premier League. Brighton 2, Chelsea 0. It remains after 32 minutes. The only other goal in the 3 o'clock games is Bournemouth 1, Tottenham 0. So Kiefer Moore with the goal there on 22 minutes for Bournemouth. 33 minutes now played at the Vitality, so that wouldn't be a good result for Antonio Conte if that continued. Before we go to the ads, we have Dan McDonald, the Irish Independent, joining us now for the afternoon. How are you, Dan?
I'm good, Shane. I was enjoying listening to Johnny Ward analyse his own Astro performance. I was sort of, I was gasping to come in there because then I heard a reference to performance-enhancing drugs, but that was Joe Malloy's golf.
Just to clarify, Joe is not on performance-enhancing drugs. It was all tongue-in-cheek.
He might be.
I've also played golf with Joe. Very methodical person in terms of his golf. Joe was a person who would think about his golf swing a lot. He's one of those.
Yeah.
You know, he plots his way around the course. You know, similar to how Johnny would plot his way around an Astro pitch. Very similar. Well,
some of the texts we have in, Dan, as well on that, the best Astro player you've played with. So, Bolo Zendin on holidays in Turkey, summer 2006, a swanky Club Med resort that had a decent all weather. Played every evening for a week. A good fella, in fairness, and his dad, who was also there, was a baller as well. That is the most random shout ever. Dan, who's the best? You're a good five-a-side man. Have you played with any legends?
I was trying to think. I've obviously been. I heard you reference the Glenn Crowe thing.
Yes.
There was also a PR company who arranged a thing at one stage to play with a load of the Manchester United legends. I don't know if you were. I'm not sure if you were part of that, but it was like sort of more like sort of Viv Anderson, Dion Dublin. I'm trying to think who else was playing in that. Sort of a Manchester United players of the sort of.
I feel like Quinton Fortune. It's like something Quinton Fortune would do.
Yeah, but it's funny. Like, I think the Glenn Crowe thing would have been a media tournament I was involved in organising, and there was like the PFAI had an ex-players team that they were sent out, and I mean, like I've played with some good players. I mean, even like Kilban, we would have played with Kilban, and like people have like played Premier League and 100 sort of plus caps or whatever, but I don't know if like Mark Quigley in that tournament was absolutely sensational. Like Neil Fenn as well. Like Neil Fenn, you talked to a lot of people in Neil Fenn's generation, and they would talk about like what an incredible footballer he was when he was younger and what a great tactical player he was. He just maybe at sort of the elite senior level just couldn't quite cut it, but like technically superb, and you could see that. And Mark Quigley, outrageous. Like a lot of people sort of a League of Ireland persuasion would know. Look, but Mark Quigley would have scored goals in Europe. He was one of those players that almost the higher the level he played, almost the better he was. And we do have a lot of those in our sort of sporting world here. You know, you talk to people who played against the likes of Paddy McCourt or people like that, and like they're the ones that would stand out. So yeah, quite a few of those lads now would spring to mind. Like definitely.
Dan, can I just confirm when you called Joe methodical? Is that another way of just saying he's a slow player?
I mean,
if you want to call him slow, call him slow.
It's like Damo. It's like when some people say a football match is absorbing, and what they mean is boring. Like it's the same principle. He's methodical. As in,
he is slow.
Yeah. I hear you with that. Yeah. I think that's on board.
I hope Joe's listening. He can get in touch and defend himself. Well, he'll be presenting tomorrow, so he can defend himself then.
Methodically tell us why he's not methodical.
Exactly. Yeah. So just bring people up to date before we take an ad break here on the scores around the Premier League. So earlier on, of course, Leicester City 0, Manchester City 1. Kevin De Bruyne with a wonderful free kick in that one. There's around 38 minutes played in the other games. So Bournemouth 1, Tottenham 0. Is the latest score. Kiefer Moore with the goal there. It's Brentford 0, Wolves 0. Brighton are 2-0 up against Chelsea, so Graham Potter not having a good day so far on his return to the Amex. The goals from Leandro Trossard and then a Ruben Loftus-Cheek own goal. Also scoreless at Sellers Park for Palace Southampton, and the game in front of us on TV here as well. It's in James's Park. Newcastle 0, Aston Villa 0. Emi Martinez has just had to go off. I think he was injured there, the goalkeeper for Aston Villa. So Robin Olsen has had to replace him 10 minutes before half time. There is action in the Championship as well this afternoon. The only two games that are full times: Bristol City 1, Swansea City 1, and West Brom 0, Sheffield United 2. The remainder of the games are ongoing. So
Sam Verdon, who's playing for Longford in Galway United, just texted in, when Finney joined in training when he was at Longford, he was by far the best player. So Dan is right. There you go.
Keep those texts coming in to 53106. Should mention as well, Liverpool fans, we've got an amazing prize for you today. On Thursday 3rd of November next week, we'll be hosting a special off-air event in the Camden in Dublin to celebrate Carlsberg's 30-year partnership with Liverpool Football Club, where we'll have Liverpool legends John Aldridge and Robbie Fowler in town for a night of football and festivities. To celebrate, we're giving you a chance to win a pair of tickets to the show, a meet and greet for you and a friend with the legends, and some merchandise as well. For your chance to win, just answer this question. Name one of the 3 squad numbers worn by Robbie Fowler at Liverpool. So Robbie Fowler at Liverpool across his career wore 3 different squad numbers. Just tell us one of them. To enter, just text your name and answer to 53106 and we'll select the winner before the end of today's show. Always drink responsibly, get the facts, be drink aware, visit drinkaware.ie.
Very briefly, with David Sneyd on OTB AM, he's a cracking article, Robbie Fowler in the 42 today, because I was besotted with Robbie Fowler when I was about 12, when he was 94, when he was sort of at his peak as you'd forget how amazing he was. And there's actually part of me, because I got into the League of Ireland more so as Robbie sort of when he joined Leeds, and I am wondering what actually happened to Robbie Fowler, and I'd forgotten how amazing he was, and his goals record was incredible when he was a young player. Unbelievable player. So that'll be a good night's crack with himself and Aldridge next week. Loads still to come, lads, between now and 5 o'clock. Keep your texts coming in through to 53106. Myself, Damien Delaney, Johnny Ward and Dan McDonnell back on OTB Football Saturday after these. And we've got Damien Delaney, Dan McDonnell and Johnny Ward with us for OTB Football Saturday, brought to you by Sky. Watch every live Premier League game this season on Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports. Just to bring you up to date on the scores, just approaching half time in the Premier League games at the moment. The game in front of us here, St James's Park, Newcastle United 0, Aston Villa 0. It's Bournemouth 1, Spurs 0, Brentford 0, Wolves 0. Brighton are now 3-0 up against Chelsea. I think we have that goal, do we? From Alan Lewis. Let's hear who got it.
Brighton and Hove Albion 3, Chelsea 0, and Brighton have another goal. A bursting run down the left-hand side. It was crossed into the box and the ball came off Chalobah. It's another own goal for Chelsea. Chalobah deflecting the ball into his own net. Estepinian it was with the assist, but it's Brighton 3, Chelsea 0.
Carnage at the Amex for Chelsea so far in that first half. 3-0 down Graham Potter's side against his old club. So we'll keep on top of that one. It's going to be a miracle now if Chelsea can turn that one around. Crystal Palace have gone a goal up against Southampton. Odson Edouard with the goal there, Tariq Mitchell with the assist. And as I said, Newcastle 0, Aston Villa 0. Earlier on, Manchester City beating Leicester City by a goal to 0 away from home. Kevin De Bruyne with a superb free kick. Just to quickly touch on the Championship scores: Burnley 0, Reading 0. It's Cardiff 0, Rotherham 0. Coventry 1-0 up against Blackpool. Huddersfield 1, Millwall 0. It's Hull City 0, Blackburn Rovers 1. Luton Town 0, Sunderland 0. Norwich City a goal up at home to Stoke City. Preston and Middlesbrough 1-1. Middlesbrough, of course, now in run by Michael Carrick. And Wigan 0, Watford 0. One of the standard games that I'm looking at here from League One. So far
it's all happening.
Derby County 4, Bristol Rovers 1, lads. James Collins with the second goal for Derby and a first half hat-trick for David McGoldrick.
Yeah, you'd forget about him in terms of Ireland, and obviously his scoring record was not great for Ireland. God, he was such an important player for us. He was a big loss for Kenny, I think.
You know, what do you make of that, Damien? Because he obviously has loads to give when he's banging goals in, but I guess when a player decides they don't want to play at international level anymore, you got to respect them.
Yeah, I thought when he kind of packed it in, it was that he was prolonging his club career, because at the time I think Sheffield United were in the Premier League or in and around it anyway. So I thought that he was kind of giving himself a rest in between kind of games, but he kind of dropped down the levels really quickly. Good to see him doing well now though. Big club, Derby County in League One, and a first half hat-trick, good for him. But yeah, I mean, that's one the manager can't account for. You're building around him. You think you have him for the next number of years, and then all of a sudden he's gone.
Yeah, good at holding up the ball. Which is a similar theme to the text from Robin Cork. Dave Barry in his mid-40s, lads, best player I played Astro with. Couldn't get near him. Incredible how he used his body to shield the ball. I was fit, mid-20s, just bouncing off him. That's the thing about the professional footballers, just know how to field the ball.
Ski McGee was like that. I vaguely recall playing him in the Salt Hill Fives. and God knows, I was probably early 20s then. Ski would have been, I would guess, presumably about like maybe 50 odd, but he was just like couldn't get near him when he was on the ball. And I was like, Jesus, how do you do this? And
it's funny you say that, Johnny. We've got a text from Donal in Galway. Played with Ski McGee in his 50s. The pace was gone, but he had a hell of a shot. Great character.
Like, there we go. Great name and League of Ireland legend. But it was just, he just put his hand out and it was just like, okay, I obviously can't. I just literally couldn't get near him.
I'm going to try.
It'd be good if Donald said, I vaguely remember Ski McGee destroying some young lad in his early 20s.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, hang on.
And it's Donald in Galway too, so he might well know Johnny.
Fan of off the ball.
Yeah. Yeah, that's unreal. Lads, we should touch, I guess, briefly on Liverpool Leeds tonight, 7:45, which is a funny kick-off time, but it's nice to have something to set up and relax and enjoy now on the Saturday evening. Darwin Núñez, Damien, like, is he going to come good? Like, he has the touch, he has the talent, but just not all there yet.
Yeah, look, he's definitely talented and he can score goals, but he's got a lot of learning to do. And I suppose in this day and age, I don't know if there's any patience to let somebody develop and somebody find their feet. You just look at Erling Haaland coming straight into the Man City team and picking up where he left off in Germany, and all of a sudden he's a top player. But I suppose you forget about Erling Haaland. I believe he was born in Manchester. His dad obviously played in the English game, so he understands it. It's the settling in issues that maybe Darwin Núñez is having. He doesn't have to deal with, but he's always going to be compared to Erling Haaland. So maybe we just need to give him a little bit of time. I suppose the only counterpoint to that is, like, when you spend the amount of money that Liverpool has spent, you're kind of buying a finished article. You just want to put him straight in your team, and all of a sudden he goes on and makes you better. He's a good player. He's got a lot of potential, but I think he's got an awful lot of learning to do in terms of physicality, linking the play, and just becoming more physical, I suppose.
Is he good enough in that link in the play, do you think? Will he be good enough, Damien, in terms of just that?
I don't know. It's a lot of work required in that. You know, I mean, he played up front for Benfica and all. He done really well in the Champions League because, you know, Benfica might have been on the back foot. And he's the type of player that he's quick, he's willing, he will run in behind, and he has a lot of space to run into. You know, you look at the low blocks that Liverpool are going to be continuously playing against. That's where you have to be tight, touched wise and technical, and your movement has to be sharp, and your other teammates have to get to know you as well. Look, he's clearly talented, and I think he's got 4 and 4 now, so it seems crazy that we're questioning him. It's just that I suppose in this day and age you expect incredible things immediately. But I think he's got a lot of scope to get better. And I think he will. He looks like the type of lad that will.
We're just watching the action at St James's Park here. Newcastle 0, Aston Villa 0. They're 5 minutes into 10 minutes of added time at the end of the first half. So I said Emi Martinez went down injured, the Villa keeper. Mark Douglas, who covers the Newcastle games, he says, game totally disrupted by Villa injuries. Martinez down for the second time undergoing treatment. No one around him, so presume it's concussion related after his earlier injury, and he'll be going off. And indeed he did go off. Robin Olsen replacing him in the Villa goal. It is a penalty right now to Newcastle. Ashley Young handball from Miguel Almiron shot. His hand was definitely in an unnatural position. So Callum Wilson here stepping up against the substitute goalkeeper Robin Olsen to put Newcastle, the hosts, a goal to the good. As I said, 6 minutes nearly into 10 minutes of added time because of that Emi Martinez injury. Callum Wilson steps up and it sends Olsen the wrong way. Kind of put it down the middle, but Newcastle 1, Aston Villa 0, and he goes off and celebrates with Joe Linton. So Newcastle 1, Villa 0. Like the Darwin Núñez one, lads, during the week, the miss, it was funny because we had the against Celtic as well, Shakhtar Donetsk, as Gareth Southgate smiles and laps up that Callum Wilson penalty in the crowd. The Darwin Núñez miss, bit of a shocker, lads, wasn't it? I mean, where does it rank in terms of the worst misses? Because the Shakhtar Donetsk one against Celtic previously was a bit of a howler as well.
I mean, the Shakhtar one is world class. To be honest. Do you know what I mean? Like, in terms of, I think, like, I don't know, if you're of a certain generation, like Ronnie Rosenthal will always be the reference point. Like I think it was at Villa Park, wasn't it, for Liverpool?
Remember well.
I mean, that is the one that sticks to mind. But I think the Shakhtar one was worse.
It was at least an Astrodan. It would come back off the wall, and you could like,
like, you know, I think that's what the Shakhtar guy was thinking the other day. It was like, the keeper's completely gone here. I'll just roll it in. If it comes back, I've got time.
Yeah.
But it is, I mean, it's just a great level. I suppose it's like the golf analogy. Like, you know, you see a golfer sort of missing a sort of a 1 foot putt or something. You think, how does it happen? But the Shakhtar one, when you consider the stakes of that game, and he had so much time to think about it. I don't know. Like, I have sympathy for them because clearly, like, there's no one playing in that game who's a bad footballer. Like, they're all exceptionally talented in their own way. But God, like, I think it was Mudryk who put him across.
Yeah,
he was like an excellent player, and you're just imagining the discussion afterwards, where it's like, I mean, even the response of his teammates weren't even given out. It was just more, how did this happen? Like, almost embarrassment. So I don't know. Has Damo ever encountered any sort of horror miss from strikers on the pitch that would you give them a little consoling word afterwards or anything like that?
Look, I mean, one-off incidents like that, you don't mind, because like you said, they are good players, and that Shakhtar player is obviously a good player. It happens, and I wouldn't even be too critical of Darwin Núñez for the miss against Ajax. I mean, it happens, you know what I mean? The ball just takes a funny turn, whatever it might be. It's just when you build in his overall performance is what I'm judging him on. That miss, no manager is going to have a go at a player for that. It means it happens. So it's just his overall game I'm talking about. He just looks a little bit raw, a little bit like a kind of a baby deer just running around all over the place, full of enthusiasm, bouncing. There's no real structure to his play. That first half against Ajax, that front three were all over the place, and I think Núñez was supposed to be playing from the left, but he a number of times ended up over on the right hand side next to Salah, and there was an element of like unpredictability, which a lot of people say that's a good thing, but managers like Klopp don't like that. I don't know whether he was given specific instructions or they were given roles to interchange. But if they were, you interchange. If somebody's moved, you go into their space. But he was just running into other people's zones and areas of the pitch where he shouldn't be there. And he had a lot of enthusiasm and he got his goal. It's just that's the type of stuff we need to learn about. Obviously, the incident with Bassi where he got a finger in the lip and he went down. That's not a good look either. Bassi pushed him off the ball quite easily as well. And a lot of centre-backs will start getting a feel for him and start thinking, like, if you're physical with him, he doesn't give anything back. He just goes over. So that's what I'm talking about. The misses, I would, one-off incident, anything can happen,
Absolutely. We do have to take a quick break here, lads, for news as Newcastle thought they made it 2-0. Callum Wilson rounding the keeper, but it is offside. Keep your text coming into 53106. We do have lads. Núñez, this has recorded the fastest ever burst of speed this week, over 27 kilometres per hour. In comparison to what I'm wondering, he'll come good, says Brian. Keep the text coming on the worst misses as well. They're flying in. So 53106. We're back after the news from 4 to 5 as well. Myself, Damien Delaney, Dan McDonnell, and Johnny Ward for OTB Football Saturday. Stay tuned. Back to Off the Ball Saturday here on News Talk. Shane Hannon with you through now until 5 o'clock. So we're with you for the next hour with myself, the broadcaster and journalist Johnny Ward, also in studio. Dan McDonnell, the football writer for the Irish Independent, is on the line as well, and as is the former Premier League star and Irish international defender Damien Delaney. Football Saturday brought to you by Sky. Watch all the football you love, including the biggest Premier League games every weekend, live on Sky. Just want to quickly run around the grounds in the Premier League to get the latest on what's happening. We will first start with action. Graham Potter visiting his old club at Brighton. It's Brighton against Chelsea. Alan Lewis.
Brighton and Hove Albion 3, Chelsea 0, and Brighton halfway to their first win under Roberto De Zerbi, and what a win this would be. Thiago Silva was twice forced to clear the ball off his own goal line before Trossard did eventually break the deadlock. Some quick feet to go around the keeper and slide the ball into the net. The lead was doubled when Ruben Loftus-Cheek deflected a corner into his own net. Chelsea should have been on the score sheet. Pulisic, Gallagher and Havertz have all had chances to get Chelsea back into this, but then just before half-time, Trevor Chalobah turning the ball into his own net, a second own goal of the afternoon for Chelsea. Disaster for them. Graham Potter's return to the Amex, not a happy one, but it's all Brighton at the moment. Brighton 3, Chelsea 0.
Yeah, not going too well for Graham Potter and his return to Brighton so far. Action just getting underway in the second half at Bournemouth. It is Bournemouth 1, Tottenham Hotspur 0. Let's hear how that first half went from Alan Seabrook.
On 22 minutes, Taverner racing away down the right-hand side, played it across the edge of the penalty area for Moore to stroke into the back of the net. At the other end, Tottenham have had real problems breaking down Bournemouth's back five. The best moment for Spurs coming from the head of a Bournemouth defender who knocked it against his own upright. It's Bournemouth 1, Tottenham 0.
There's also been one solitary goal in the first half at Selhurst Park. Crystal Palace against Southampton. Nigel Bidmead is there.
Crystal Palace 1, Southampton 0, and the home side fully deserved their lead. Time and again they threatened the Southampton goal, but it took them until 7 minutes before half-time to make the breakthrough. Wilf Zaha won possession, fed Tyreek Mitchell, and the left-back crossed low for centre-forward Odsonne Edouard to score from close range. Zaha has been the victim of some roughhousing from Southampton, and all three of their bookings are for fouls on the Ivorian winger. Palace lead 1-0.
Ian Beach is in London watching the action between Brentford and Wolves. Let's see how the first half went there.
Brentford 0, Wolves 0. It's been a strong first half for Wolves. They've managed to create a couple of chances from just outside the penalty area with shots that flashed wide of the Brentford goal. Brentford's best chance was a long-range effort from Josh Da Silva that curled high and over the bar. But by and large, Wolves have been passing the ball around well and getting into good positions. But the biggest problem for Wolves is that Matheus Nunes has gone off injured, and that's a problem for Portugal as well. His shoulder injury looks like it might be serious. It's Brentford 0, Wolves 0.
And the game that we've been watching on television, loads of injury time at the end of the first half. So to bring us up to date on what all happened at St James's Park between Newcastle and Aston Villa is Stephen Goldsmith.
Newcastle 1, Aston Villa 0. A frantic game with a lot of injury time played. Martinez, Villa's keeper, was down twice. One resulted with him having to leave the pitch. He took a blow to his head from his own player Tyrone Mings. He's had to go off. Robin Olsen come on a sub. He made a good save from Almiron before Newcastle won a penalty, which was dispatched by Callum Wilson. The penalty was won when the cross from the right was handballed by Ashley Young. He's went down. He's put his right arm up. It's a stonewaller. Villa probably had the better of the game before that. But at the break, it's Newcastle 1, Aston Villa 0.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on all those games throughout the second half here between now and 5 o'clock. And of course, the early game was Leicester City 0, Manchester City 1. Pep Guardiola's side, not their usual ultra impressive selves, but Kevin De Bruyne with a lovely free kick just after the stroke of half time to give them the 3 points in that match, and plenty of action ongoing in the Championship as well. Loads of texts in, lads, to 53106 on the best misses or worst misses, depending on how you look at it. I'm thinking back to Ryan Giggs. I think he missed at Old Trafford at one stage, and Torres maybe against United at the same goal at one point. Lads, best miss I ever saw was Eddie Clamp for Notts Forest at either Chelsea or Fulham. I used to watch both. He was in the keeper's area with no one in front of him and cleared the crossbar by several yards, says Malcolm in Kilmeague. Ross Bartley versus Bournemouth. The early celebration made it so much worse. Kieran Ennis. I think, lads, when you celebrate too soon, it's that makes it a bad miss, but also an embarrassing miss when you start celebrating. There's nothing good about that. Like you'd be doing that in the Astro, Johnny.
Wasn't there a viral one recently where a fella thought he'd scored a goal and he ran off celebrating, but the ball got stuck in the mud on the goal line or something like that? There was definitely one of those recently. But I was thinking during the break that I had a bad miss in my mind recently. I just couldn't think which one it was. If people, you will find it if you sort of search on social for it. If you put in Bala Town, the Welsh club miss. It was against Sligo Rovers in the summer, and actually this was a classic one of like the implications of a miss, where this was Sligo Rovers' first European tie, the first round tie in the showgrounds, the second leg, where they were terrible and they were very, very lucky to go through, mainly because Bala, who were like the underdogs, missed a load of chances. And there was one in injury to, I think it was the second half, but it was like would have been the winning goal because it was like a minute or two left, where the ball came back off the crossbar, and this guy called Luke Wall, he couldn't miss, and yet from sort of 2 yards he hits the ball against the bar. He somehow sends it straight back against the crossbar. And I mean, this goal, when you think about it, it cost them 300 grand for going through the next round, or alternatively it gave Sligo Rovers 300 grand. But then Sligo Rovers went and played Motherwell, beat them, and got another 300 grand. So like for Sligo Rovers, there was like a sort of a 600 grand swing in that one miss. And it just, I mean, if you talk about at that level how important that was, I mean, that is a pretty meaningful one. Also, people can look it up on YouTube, the iconic miss that was Diana Ross's penalty at the opening ceremony for the 1994 World Cup. I mean,
the goal splits.
That's an icon. I mean, she was, I'd say in rehearsals she'd been sticking it away, and then, you know, you come for your moment 2 yards out.
High heel, was she wearing high heels maybe? I'm not trying to give excuses here, but I mean...
Yeah, Celine Dion would have stuck it away, like European efficiency.
Yeah, like, Shania Twain would have put a top bins, like...
Definitely,
yeah,
but...
Whatever about Diana Ross, yeah.
Didn't happen.
Shane Ross has created a few open goals in recent times as well, but I was just thinking there in terms of that, like what Dan is saying, I'd forgotten about that Bala miss, and you're talking about like managerial reigns and all that. That like the highlight for John Russell this year was 100% like the Motherwell win and Sligo, the feel good vibe around the town when they beat Motherwell and spanked them really over the two legs, and like the platform that gave him, and if that hadn't happened, you know, like people would be saying, well, look at the season we had. We were knocked out from against Ballatown, who were bang average really, like they should have been beating them. And this gets me to just what I was thinking of earlier. Who would be the League of Ireland manager of the league of the year, Dan? Because when you think if UCD stay up, I think Andy Myler has to be in with the shout. You look at Kevin Doherty at Drogheda. If Derry win the Cup, Rory Higgins has done a great job. Stephen O'Donnell got Dundalk into Europe, and obviously I imagine Stephen Bradley be favourite.
Yeah, I mean, I think like they're all good contenders that you mentioned there, and I'm not sort of trying to bring the mood down, but I think when you consider the personal stuff that Stephen Bradley has spoken about, and what he's been going through since June, and I appreciate they were the favourites to win the league at the start of the season. I appreciate they have no doubt the best squad. So the standalone achievement of winning the league, I understand why people will say, well, you know, what's incredible about that. But I think when you add in the fact that he's let a son seriously ill and, you know, had to manage a European campaign, you know, they've been playing twice a week for most of the time. I know they had to sort of sacrifice maybe one or two games. I think like the thing about Stephen Bradley is, I know David Snade was speaking about it yesterday, that probably because he's at the stage now at Rovers where they are like the best team, they have the best squad, etc., etc. So they're probably not going to get a huge amount of plaudits or praise or individual praise for things that they win and things that they do. Yet it's probably his collective body of work over like 6 years is incredibly impressive when you consider where Rovers were when he took over as to where they are now. So the debate over the standalone season, all those candidates are certainly worthy of a mention. And you're right to mention Andy Myler if UCD win the playoffs, certainly. But I wouldn't downplay Bradley's achievements either, like in terms of everything that's been going on.
I did suggest this could be the best League of Ireland team we've had, the Shamrock Rovers team, and a lot of people were quick to
the 80s Rovers team.
See again.
Sometimes you mean.
No, because like obviously these arguments are kind of stupid because football is just far better now than it was in the 80s.
Fair, okay,
Do you know, so it's kind of hard. But I suppose the more topical, you could say this century, because like the Shells teams that had like say Joey Undoe and Wes Houlihan, and then you had Dundalk in 2016. But like at the same time, I don't know, what do you think, Damo? I mean, they've kind of cantered to 3 league titles in a row now.
Yeah, they got, you know, the biggest squad and the best squad, and you know their stadium is probably the best in the league as well. You know, their academy is well set up. You know, so Stephen Bradley's at the centre of all of that. So it's not a case of what other League of Ireland clubs have done and just put kind of all the money on the top end and just bought in the best players. You know, they seem to be building something there that could be sustainable. When you look at the academy, they're also generating a lot of money from player sales, generating a lot of money from these European adventures. So all is looking well, really. And I suppose the important question was for Stephen Bradley, like, how long does he stay there? You know, I know he had an option to go to Lincoln this season, I think. But where is a good jump-off point for him now? Where does he land that gives him an opportunity to progress? It's an interesting one. I presume you guys, Dan, would probably have a bit more info on that.
Yeah, I mean, like he was asked about it during the week, and again, go back to his family situation. He said that wouldn't be an obstacle to him considering anything. They're quite hopeful in that regard, and I don't know where he would go, Damien, because I think the surprise with the Lincoln one was there would have been still a lot of people around him, I think, who were surprised he didn't go for that. Just in the context of Lincoln being regarded as probably quite a forgiving club. And listen, we all know how, as much as you'd like it to be different, like, you know how Irish football is probably perceived in England. I mean, we've had comments to that effect recently, that someone going over there, they'd be very lucky to find a club that would be hugely forgiving if they started slowly. And that means that like, where realistically are you going to land in the English ladder? You would think that, a sort of a patient League One club wasn't a bad fit. But then in saying that, like, I mean, I think they're doing okay, Lincoln, but you're in a division with sort of, Ipswich are up there and Plymouth are doing well this year. But, we mentioned Derby, some of the players they have. Maybe there's a ceiling for what you can do there. And were they some of the factors that sort of, that came into it? But funny, I just think with Bradley, like, he's always spoken like about his regard for, say, football in Scandinavia. Like, he watches a lot of that. Around the Molde and Djurgården's games, you can tell from the way he speaks that, like, he'd look at that world. And maybe, and this is a very simplistic point, right? So I'm not trying to draw comparisons here, but maybe people might look at the route someone like Graham Potter has gone. That you can become that type of character. Like the MK Dons manager at the moment, they took him from Belgium, even though he's from the UK. That it's possible someone like Bradley, like his style and how he operates, could be maybe more suited to something European or up to Scandinavian direction, rather than necessarily jumping into the cutthroat English market, where unfortunately with his CV, rightly or wrongly, if it went badly somewhere and he was done after 6 months, he probably wouldn't get another chance. That's just been realistic. So that's probably why you have to be very careful and careful what you wish for. And that I think the turning down the decision has paid off, in the sense that he's got another league now. He's got a group stage European thing, which was a question mark around that time, even though it hasn't gone, say, incredibly well for them. But I think actually you sense that they've won a bit of respect from some of their opponents, and whatever about press and PR and what people like us say in these shows. I suppose it's more a case of what people within football are noting about your team's style of play and what you do and your philosophy and your consistency. Even selling players, his record for selling players out of the club is pretty good. And all those factors probably go on your CV and give you a chance. But I sort of wonder, would he travel? And that does. I
think it's a bit difficult for him to, even if you land in League One or League Two, any job that has any kind of, good feel about it, there's, dozens and dozens of candidates with CVs will be in for those ones, because they'll see it as an opportunity to get some success. So anything he lands, I think the UK is going to be a short term, can you turn us around quick? And then you almost buy credits with the club, and then we'll allow you to implement the things you want to do. But we need a quick, fast hit of success. So you took the words out of my mouth. I just thought maybe not Scandinavia, but I thought abroad. Because there is such a gap, and I suppose for him to kind of inch his way up the ladder, I think abroad would be a good look for him. He'd get a sizable club with European football, and that puts him on display more if he does want to come back to the game in England. But maybe he doesn't. Maybe he just wants to keep improving as a coach, and I think the continent's not a bad show for him.
Maybe he's in the running for the Ireland job at some stage, or an Ireland under 21 job or something like that. It's pat that Stephen Kenny has gone down. Stephen Kenny's future, I think, obviously will be dictated by. It'll actually be interesting if Stephen Kenny, when Stephen Kenny obviously does eventually go, and if Stephen Kenny's tenure is deemed a failure, which obviously is possible as well, will that be like a slight on a potential League of Ireland incumbent or whatever? Because I think, in fairness to Bradley, he's building up a big CV. I think he's a classic example of a manager who's learned on the job. I think he's learned in terms of his media performances. I think he's learned in terms of the way his team plays, in terms of the players he needs. And I think he's become, like Stephen Bradley's reign, I'll always say this, it was going badly, and then he put Gavin Bazunu in goal as a 16-year-old, and they've been kind of the best team in Ireland almost ever since. No coincidence. But he and then he brought Manus back, and he sorted the goal. Rovers had a terrible goalkeeping problem. They brought in Bazunu, then they brought in Manus. Manus has been a great success again. But I think even in the sense of the European, I'd argue it's been a disappointing European campaign. They hadn't scored a goal after 4 games, and they were knocked out. And I think Rovers should be good enough to be more competitive, and I think he's probably learned from this year in terms of the depth of the squad, but also the type of player you need to be a force in Europe. And I think
Johnny, you can't discount all those qualifiers that they won, in the Champions League.
Yeah, true. Yeah,
you know what I mean? I mean, it's their first taste of competitive Europa League football, so they've gone up a level. But I think they earned the right for that because they did really well in the Champions League. You know, they had an unbeaten record, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, at Tala in Europe. Really, really good. So, like, the progress is there for them. It's just they got into the group stages and it's new to everybody. You know, next year, that's a real distinct possibility. They'll get into the Conference League group stages again. And I'd say those players, management of the football club, only dying for another go at it. You know what I mean? They probably felt they learned so much and would do things so differently. But that's what that competition is for. Now, they're going to get the Champions League run again. They're going to get Europa League run again, and then probably round up in the Conference League. And that's great for them and him. But if he's going to get a decent job abroad, he's going to have to, you know, make a better fist of the Conference League group stages next year.
I think, so just before you come in, Dan, the other thing is, and I'll be very brief here, is like we do sort of sometimes forget just how much the resources are totally against Irish clubs, full stop, at this level. Like, they're barely entitled to get a point, really, resources-wise, and the money that's involved in all of these other countries, even the Scandinavian ones.
Yeah, I know. Well, I sort of would agree with you. Like, you know, they were probably in a tough enough group, but in saying that, you look around the Conference League and there are other clubs. You know, the Kosovan champions are in there. You know, Punic, Yerevan from Armenia. There's a few others. So, like, I wouldn't. I think it's unrealistic to expect them to sort of compete with certain teams. But in saying that, like, at some point you have to aspire to more. There's a balancing act. I think Bradley would have learned a lot from this year, as Damo sort of says, but their home record has been very, very good. You know, I mean, they were unlucky against Molde at home, really. So they could still be unbeaten in Europe at home. But I think what they've learned this year, or the lesson that they're going to have to apply in the future, is that away from home, they haven't been able to sort of master the art of how you compete with these better teams away from home. That Rovers are obviously committed to a certain style and a certain system, but what they've probably found is that they don't have maybe the right sort of players with the profile for playing that type of counter-attacking style that you need to do in those type of fixtures. And all the soundings probably are that they're going to try and sign players in that profile over the winter with a view to addressing that in future, because they have an ability, I think, and talent to sort of match and compete with these teams, and they've shown that. But away from home, they've been exposed, and I think that's a sort of a very clear sort of working point. But the other thing I'll say about Bradley as well, and of course, like, you know, the danger is, like, if you keep winning leagues, then you don't win one. It's obviously, like, very damaging. As people say, it's damaging to your stock, and that's why there's an element of, like, getting out at the right time is a massive skill in management. Like, it absolutely is. But he is only 37 too. So, like, there's not a mad rush there, but there is also that sense that...
Where are all those players, Dan, contract-wise? Because I know the League of Ireland is obviously notorious for short-term deals and stuff like that, but I think that's what my point at the top was. Like, I think Rovers are built a little bit different. You know,
they are,
period of dominance, and it was very top-heavy with signings. Perhaps Dundalk as well, I wouldn't have an intimate knowledge of that, but I think Rovers are built a little bit different.
Yeah, I think they only have a handful of players out of contract at the moment. I think it might just be, I think, Chris McCann, Aaron Green, and maybe Alan Mannis, like, who may stay on. That's the thing. Like, they're not sort of facing into sort of some end of season upheaval. I might be missing one or two others, but I'm pretty sure they're the main ones. So they're in a situation where it's not like they're going to lose 3 or 4 of their best players over the winter for free, which is what used to happen to Dundalk every year, you know, or 1 or 2 players. So Rovers are way better set up.
And the academy is good for them too, right? That, you know, they've already blooded a lot of young kids, so, you know, they've that to their game as well.
This is
they do.
Sorry, Danny. This is a beautifully worked corner. This is a 2-0 lead here for Newcastle. It's just I haven't really seen this before. It was
beautiful. It was very well worked.
Very well worked. And I think Almiron is involved.
Trippier as well.
Almiron, actually, does he get the Trippier with the Trippier is a quality cross on him as well, and
so Trippier passes it short to Almiron backheel,
little backheel, and I'm not sure if Villa. I was always told when you were being coached to have 2 players on 2 at the corner. I'm not sure if they did have 2, but it looks like it's kind of game over for Villa, who've been they've been hanging in there and they haven't been bad. But
it's a VAR checking goal possible offside. It ruins the fun,
I think Newcastle are third now, lads, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, if they win
running
this,
table,
live table wise, they would be,
long live Mohammed bin Salman. But
it's being checked here. But I mean, they're drawing the lines. All this crap. But yeah, and Callum Wilson, if it is a goal, Gareth Southgate's in the crowd there, and he's certainly put his name forward for inclusion potentially in that World Cup squad in 2 weeks' time. They have Ivan Toney as well, both of whom could hit penalties, and you never know, England might need penalty takers at some point.
Really preempting the
decision goal, no offside, defense, so it is 2-0 to Newcastle. Just to update you on the other scores of the Premier League, 67 minutes played at the Vitality. Bournemouth 2, Spurs 1 now. So Kiefer Moore, we heard in the first half, gave Bournemouth the lead. Kiefer scored again 5 minutes into the second half to give them a 2-0 advantage. Ryan Sessegnon pulling one back on 57 minutes, but remains 2-1 to Bournemouth. It's Brentford 1, Wolves 1. Ben Mee scoring 5 minutes into the second half to give Brentford the lead, but Ruben Neves equalising for Wolves. It's Brighton 3, Chelsea 1 now. Chelsea have pulled 1 goal back. Kai Havertz with the goal on 48 minutes. There's 68 minutes now in the clock, so Brighton still with that 2-goal cushion. Remains Crystal Palace 1, Southampton 0. Alson Edouard with the goal there. There was, interestingly, a yellow card for Patrick Vieira, the Palace coach, after half an hour, so I'm not sure what that was regarding. And as we said, Newcastle 2, Aston Villa 0 is the latest score in that other game as well. Yeah, lads, it's an interesting one on Stephen Bradley, and look, congrats to everyone involved in Shamrock Rovers, and commiserations to everyone involved in Finn Harps, because it's not nice when your team goes down as well. And Ollie Horgan was very honest as Joe Linton makes it 3-0 to Newcastle now, but honest words from Ollie Horgan last night, Johnny.
I met Ollie actually outside of Croke Park before the All-Ireland final in the football, and I'm sure he probably won't mind me saying this, where he signed he's basically said, I've signed an awful lot of players, and some of them I kind of I would like to let go, but I kind of can't. And he, in fairness to Harps, like his ability to pull these obscure signings out of all parts of like the globe, not to mind Ireland, and somehow survive. This year, it was really interesting to see some of the people associated with the club really calling out the players for the performance last night. So on the one level, I think Andy Myler has done an unbelievable job at UCD. They've lost massively important players, and I'd have given them next to no chance of staying up. And they're basically safe with a game to go from finishing bottom anyway. Sorry, but this was just too much for Harps. But if Harps go down, when Harps go down next season, the Premier Division, Cork City are coming back up. I'd give Galway or Waterford a really strong chance, certainly Waterford, of beating UCD, and you could have like a practically full-time Premier Division, really strong, with Cork City possibly having almost like as the biggest crowd in the league, maybe Bartala, Colin Healy at the helm, really competitive Premier Division next season. But it'll be tough for Ollie Horgan. The stadium move is a big thing for them, but this is a disappointing season for Harps, and maybe they'll just have to rethink how they source players, because it didn't work this season. Just lastly on the Rovers thing, when you mentioned Stephen Bradley there, they do deserve credit for winning the league, because Derry did actually really push them this year. They actually did, and their points tally was really good. And I was at the game last Friday in Tala, and that performance to beat Pats after going a goal down and squeezing the life out of them, it was a really performance of champions, and they deserve a lot of credit. Sorry, Dan, but I was just saying, before we move on from the League of Ireland, like you were in Dundalk last night, and as you pointed out on Twitter, financially that's huge for them to secure that third place ahead of St Pat's.
Dundalk back in Europe, they only were out of it for a year, but when you consider around a year ago this week, the Peak Six were still there, and it looked like takeover stuff may not happen. And a lot of people would have been pretty worried about where the club was headed. But the takeover went through eventually. And they got Stephen O'Donnell from St Patrick's Athletic, which is obviously controversial. And a year on, they've sort of got over the line. And at one point they were sort of challenging for a title. But in reality, the last couple of weeks, they've been struggling. Like Stephen O'Donnell last night was pretty honest, said it was probably their worst home performance of the season. They got a bit of luck. There was a sort of refereeing decisions is a big talking point lately, but people again on social media, there's a clip of the foul that was given for a free kick for the opening goal, which was incredible. Like Ryan O'Kane just fell over with almost no one challenging him, and nobody in the ground could nearly believe the free kick was awarded. And then David Millen sticks it in from 25 yards. So they've got a little bit of luck. They got 3 points back for a game they lost in Sligo, because Sligo fielded a suspended player. That proved quite important in terms of the cushion they have now. So
here's one for you, Dan, right? Because we mentioned Robbie Fowler earlier, right? We remember Robbie Fowler for his honesty. Should Ryan O'Kane, he should have just got up and said to the ref, I wasn't touched, that's not a free, play on. He should have, because that's not a foul. I know it's like the professional thing to do is play on.
Yeah,
but
Johnny, I'd like to see an 18-year-old footballer.
I think he was looking for a free. He almost looked at the ref for a free. I was like, you weren't touched.
The 7-second clip, sort of makes it look that way. But I remember like watching the thing in the ground at the time, and I don't know. I think everyone was perplexed it was awarded because no one around was appealing or anything. But I must say, even when the Dogs scored the free kick, the Bows lads weren't going back for the referee again. I was like, Jesus, like these lads are completely beaten down.
That's a sign of where Bows are, yeah.
They should be going crazy still over this. But
get off the fence, Johnny, would you? Get off the fence.
Johnny, a 17, 18-year-old kid.
What does his age matter? I mean, if I were playing under 12s, I would have known.
Imagine him explaining to his manager who's looking to qualify for Europe with $250,000 on the line. Listen, Stephen,
Paolo Di Canio, Robbie Fowler, better men than me.
Robbie Fowler had a little bit of more credit in the bank in terms of his career than an 18-year-old kid. So that's just
great prospect and all that.
A garbage suggestion, really.
It's not. He wasn't even touched. Like he wasn't touched.
Damien, come on, Damien.
No, I'm with you there. Like no player's ever going to do that. Like
they do. I've given you two examples where like no, Robbie Fowler is like that was a dive. That's not a penalty at Highbury. It does happen. Very, very little, to be fair.
It'll never happen, Johnny.
I feel sorry for the ref because the ref must be feeling terrible. It's all over social media. Like this was an awful decision, and he should have just said, "Listen, ref, I wasn't touched there. It wasn't a free."
Hey, Johnny, did you see that the decision for Treaty United against Waterford? The kid got sent off.
I did.
And I mean, that's another atrocious decision. Like, I mean, how he sent him off for that when he just flicked the ball away and his momentum carried. He did everything he could to retract his legs. I feel really bad because I think the game turned on that as well. I think it was one I think, or two.
Yeah, they were back. They had one goal back, and the other thing was in the battle for third place. I mean, Pats needed to win last night in Sligo, and they're done for a penalty that to me looks a terrible decision as well. So it's not been a good week at all for officials in the League of Ireland.
Who'd be a referee? I'd still rather be a referee than be a diver, to be honest.
He wasn't a diver now.
No, not that incident. The previous one you're talking about.
Oh yeah.
Very principled. I want to go back. Can I just go back to the Finn Harps thing briefly? I will say one thing about the Finn Harps situation is that it's really it's very sad for the club and a lot of sympathy for them. But like the Harps model there, it just goes to show like they trying to be a sort of a half part-time, half full-time club in the permanent. They had players travelling from around the country to train, bringing in guys from the UK in a way that like it just goes to show like you can't survive like that anymore. Like the way things are going, as Johnny said, like pretty much every team next season in the Premier is going to be morning training sort of full-time together, like 4, 5, 6 days a week when you add in recovery and all of that. And the idea of a club probably trying to do things the way Harps were is probably in the past now, but hopefully they can somehow regroup and come back with a new stadium, which is the thing that they're trying to get over the line at the moment, and maybe that could be the nice focus for them.
We've a very vibrant league. A lot of the stadia are shite. There's no doubt about it. But TG Carr has shown a lot of the women's games, which is great. And I'd love to see more exposure next season. Maybe somebody else would look at it as well as RT and show more games because there's Damien Duff is just one of the aspects of it. There's a lot of quality there and a lot of storylines, a lot of good footballers.
Yeah, and the interest seems to be heading in the right direction as well. Should mention the Women's National League as well, reaching an unbelievable conclusion this evening, 5:20 for those games. Wexford Youth versus Shelbourne. Shelbourne with a 1 point advantage as things stand, so they know a win would see them lift the title. But if it is a draw in that game and Athlone Town were to beat Bohemians away, then it would go to a playoff between Athlone and Shells for the title. So we'll keep an eye on that. And of course the lads will react to it tomorrow on the show. Just to bring up to date, before we take this quick ad break, on the Premier League scores around the ground. So the game in front of us, Newcastle 3, Aston Villa 0. It's Palace 1, Southampton 0. Brighton still have that 3-1 advantage over Chelsea, 75 minutes on the clock. Brentford 1, Wolves 1. And Spurs have drawn level, lads, with Bournemouth. So it's 2-2 there now Ben Davies with the equalising goal on 73 minutes.
Oh, take that out of the net, son.
Another goal for Newcastle. 4-0. Miguel Almiron in just the knee slide celebration. Johnny, talk us through that one.
It's again just technique, left-footed corner. You know straight away when he hits this is hitting into the corner, and he's featured a lot. He's got a very infectious smile, hasn't he? He does, like
babyface kind of maybe.
Babyface is we good around the dressing room type lad. Puts you in good form, and he's been very influential here. This is a beautiful finish, and it's a case of back to the Steven Gerrard-esque sort of Villa days, where in fairness, this is just kind of totally derailed since injury time the first half. But they're the lovely owners of Newcastle celebrating. But this is a gorgeous goal. Left foot, corner of the net, just never going to stop it.
Yeah, 4-0 win for Villa last week. They're 4-0 down now this week. Football comes at you fast. So loads to still get into. Kind of want to touch on the Anthony showboating as well, lads, after this ad break. So OTB Football Saturday, myself, Johnny Ward, Dan McDonnell and Damien Delaney back with you after this through until 5 o'clock. And we've got Johnny Ward, the esteemed broadcaster and journalist, in studio with me. Dan McDonnell, football writer of the Irish Independent, on the line, as is the former Irish international and Premier League footballer Damien Delaney.
Let's just tell what happened here. So, like, we're discussing, we're going to talk about Anthony and the showboating, and then you're like, you found a clip that Damien Delaney wasn't having it at all.
Well, we'll get to this, lads. Right. So Anthony, of course, hauled off at half time. I think he was on a yellow card for United in the 3-0 win over Sheriff midweek. And Anthony does his little loop-to-loop trick, as you call it, and Pat tries a little ball in behind. Doesn't quite work out, but a lot of people calling the skill itself a little bit pointless. Other people arguing that it was, that's just what Anthony does. He's done it for years. The quote from Paul Scholes before I get to your takes on it, lads. So Robbie Savage was giving out about it as well, but Scholes' quote, it's just ridiculous. It's showboating. He's not beating a man. He's not entertaining anybody, but that's just the way he is. If I was at number 6, I know what I'd be doing. I saw him do it at Ajax as well, and it's the way he is, but he needs that knocking out of him. We saw the manager's reaction on the bench. He was not impressed, and I just don't know what it achieved. The fans love a bit of showboating, but what does that achieve? You have to ask Anthony. I'm not even sure it's skill, is it? Anyone can do that. Is that his trademark? I think he needs a better one. I like to see skill and entertainment, but that's not skill or entertainment. That's just being a clown, says Paul Scholes. Damien Delaney, what was your take?
I completely agree with Scholes. It's not the Harlem Globetrotters. It's not a circus. It's professional football, and I thought it was quite unprofessional, pointless, self-indulgent, regardless of whether anything came of it. It's like what it speaks for, really. And I was working commentary. I think I said something similar at the time as well. So not for me, to be honest with you. If you want to do that stuff, do it in training afterwards or before training, or go and play 5-a-side or over 35s with me.
Lads, I don't know. I quite enjoyed it. I thought he was expressing himself a little bit in the pitch. I think if the pass had worked out afterwards, we'd be talking about it maybe a bit differently.
You wouldn't, trust me. You absolutely wouldn't.
But or like Ronaldo step overs, like you could argue some of those step overs over the years were a bit pointless. Like he might have added like 2 or 3 extra step overs onto the move.
I just had to, when he mentioned the Harlem Globetrotters, I just had to think of that when Krusty bet against the Harlem Globetrotters. He's spinning the ball, take it off him. But it was like this was similar from Anthony. I don't know. It was mildly entertaining. A bit of it was such a nothing game he started for Ronaldo. I mean,
yeah, but sorry lads, I this whole argument that he shouldn't have done this trick, like,
it wasn't a crime against humanity.
No.
Take the ball off him.
Maybe we're talking a bit too much about it, but I just felt like, right, he's entertaining the fans.
Is he though? Like, who's entertained by that?
I was entertained.
Well, I thought it was funny. Like, there was a comedic value to it. He's just
entertained by your response to it.
So it's professional football in the European League, and you're talking about comedic value to games.
Yeah, but
what score was that at the time?
It was, what was the score at the time? It was
either
0-0 or 1-0. Yeah, it was first half.
I think it was nil all.
But he kept the ball. Like they couldn't get the ball off him. So it is what it is.
But they weren't trying to get the ball. They weren't trying to get the ball off.
No,
either. I think that was possibly the factor here.
There was a shade of Astro about it. Now, definitely.
There was an element of, if someone did that in Astro, Johnny, you'd probably
kick them.
Have words.
You'd kick them. You'd kick them.
But I don't know. I mean, if they're 4-0 up and it's the last minute, and there's been a bit of sort of trash talk in the game, and it's sort of, I don't mind it so much then.
Is that not insulting at that point then? Like,
well, I think it's insulting anyway. No, is it not? It's a bit like this game will be grand. Will be grand. Like, it's only Sheriff at home. Like, if you're talking about an act on a football pitch that someone does, you almost have to be saying, would you be willing to do this in every game? Is this part of your repertoire? As I said, if there was a bit of spice in the game and you're taunting someone, I actually don't mind that. If it's sort of towards the end of the match and the game is won, yeah, maybe it's a bit disrespectful. But like at sort of 0-0, it's just a bit odd. And I mean, surely the fact he was taken off at half time reflects.
There has to be a level of professionalism. There just has to be. I mean, it's pointless, it's disrespectful, and it's unprofessional. To carry on like that. It's like coming into work, I don't know, doing something equally as disrespectful. It's not the done thing. I can't imagine any of the senior players with a young kid. I mean, that would, in any change room I was in, would have been dealt with pretty quickly.
It's one of those things. Like, it kind of reminds me of the time. Was it an FA Cup match? Maybe United beat Arsenal 4-0 at Old Trafford, and Nani dribbled or juggled the ball, not it with his head a couple of times, and I think he was hacked by a couple of Arsenal players afterwards, and I think Gilberto Silva had a few stern words with him as well. Like those lads from, like, the Portuguese players, the Brazilian players, the countries that have a bit of flair.
I don't think that's flair, though. I don't think that's flair. I think that's like anybody could do it. Well, I probably couldn't do it, but I mean anyone. It's not. It was nothing. I mean, it would have annoyed me if I was playing either with him or against him.
So if one of your teammates, Damien, had hypothetically done that in a match, like, what do you say to them at halftime?
Show some respect. With professional football, this is not five-a-side. This is not training. If someone did that in training, you'd be accusing them of not respecting the session, of not respecting the what we're trying to achieve here. I mean, that type of stuff is done, where you go 5 minutes early and lads are fluting around with the ball and just having a bit of, playing two-touch or pig in the middle or whatever. Some fellas go off and do silly tricks and things like that, but there has to be a level of professionalism and there has to be a level of respect. And I don't mind if somebody's doing a trick and they're trying to achieve something. Even the Nanny one, when he was running with it in his head, at least he's moving with it. That was as pointless as I'm ever going to see.
Let's get into a game of what about you. Let's get into a game. Sorry, Dan.
Damo, Charlie, let me cut in quickly. I want to just to double check Damien's philosophy on this. How are you on the Panenka penalties? Are you okay with the Panenka penalties? If someone, I do agree with you on this, but
where's the line? Yeah.
As long as you score,
okay, because there's an intention to score. It's more of
absolutely, and there's an intention that the goalkeeper's going to dive. It's a risky strategy, and if it was ultra important and you do something like that, you better make sure you score, and then everyone forgives it. But if you do, and I remember who was the fellow who did one recently in a big game, and maybe not recently, but someone did one in a big game and he missed it.
It was Javier Hernandez in the MLS, Damien, wasn't it?
Did Liam Lawrence do it once as well in a playoff game or something a few years back?
Might have done. Chicharito did it in a last minute. Yeah. The game was level and he put it straight into the keeper's hands to win the game.
Yeah, I see what I mean. Like, if if there's something seriously, at stake, then you're better off just being safe, just for your own sanity, to be honest with you. But you're scoring a goal, and it is a tactic to score a goal.
Bear with me here, Damien. Right, I've heard the argument made about the Anthony one. Right now, this is not my opinion. Someone said this, that he saw the run being made in behind and the pass he was going to make, and he was doing the turn to delay, to allow himself the time to delay the pass and give it at just the right moment. Now, is that not? Then it has a purpose, no?
No, that was his. Well, if you're waiting for that, then at least shift the ball one way and go the other way. You know what I mean? No, like, there's no way. That was self-indulgent and it was disrespectful to his teammates and to the opposition as well.
Well, sure. Where are you on Ronaldo then? Like, just sauntering off like before the game is even over?
I gave my tuppence on that too. I thought it was dead right that he was dropped for the Spurs game. That's disrespectful.
Damien he's an old school manager.
Can I just say, right? So Anthony himself, Anthony himself, right? He's 22. He posted a screen grab of the turn on his Instagram story the next day, I think, and he said in Portuguese, "We are known for our art, and I won't stop doing what got me where I am."
Lovely. He's a good player as well. Like, so
he's a good player.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind having him for Go United against Longford Town tomorrow. Put it that way.
It's a minor issue. I think we spent way too much.
We have.
It's fair.
He sort of Ten Hag dealt with it. You know what I mean? And said, "Look, you have to show respect," and that's it.
He's come down hard on, like, Ten Hag. I think has in the last couple of weeks, Damien, like, he's filled United fans with a little bit of optimism. Like, he's the buck stops with him, and he's quite stern. Like, the whole Ronaldo stuff was handled fairly well. I mean, it's almost forgotten about now. Now, I don't know if Ronaldo will be in the team for the game against West Ham tomorrow, but it was all handled reasonably efficiently.
it was handled perfectly, like textbook. You
and
know
a
what
difficult
I mean?
situation, Damo. Like
Absolutely. Like, I mean, you're not talking about any old player here. You're talking about a guy who's a huge commercial value to Manchester United. I mean, there's a good chance that Ronaldo could have took that the wrong way, down tools, and went on strike, and all of a sudden the share price is affected. You know, you saw what happened when Ronaldo moved a bottle of Coke, I think it was recently. Like, I mean, that's the type of weight that he carries. And in fairness to Ten Hag, he dealt with it brilliantly. And I remember driving up to do the game, and I wondered, will he play him against Sheriff? And I thought he would. Because, you know, even if, and I think they are looking to move him in January, you know, you need to get him in the team now, and you need to show that he can score goals and play 90 minutes, which he did. So he's obviously looking down the road now and saying, you know, if I make an example of him and keep leaving him out, he might lose interest, and then his value drops in January or whatever it might be. So, look, he handled it as good as any manager could have handled it, incredibly well. And I do agree with you. I like him. I just like listening to him. I like looking at him. He's a serious manager. Very, very serious manager.
Ronaldo's helping him as well by just not being very good anymore, like, which is fair enough. So Ronaldo doesn't have the weight of performance. Just going finally back the last time on the Anthony thing, I mentioned Longford.
The texts are flying in, by the way.
What's that?
The texts are flying in.
Texts are flying in. We should have dedicate the next hour of the show, even though it don't exist. But what would your old manager and current Galway United manager John Caulfield have done to Anthony? Were he in charge, Damo?
I'd say he'd be doing a running session today still. He'd have been running every day for about 4 days after doing that.
Proper order.
just to give you a flavour on the text, right? Cheer up, Damien. It's hardly a crime what he done. Joining the grumpy old men of football.
He is.
That's not true, man.
Shouting at a cloud.
That's not true. That's not true.
Someone goes, lads, if you're looking for a Simpsons reference here, old man yells at cloud is more apt. Dave. Someone says this cranky crap about unprofessional disrespect is the anti-flamboyance culture that has given Irish and UK football their reputations for turgidity.
It is, man. Like, just final comment on Astor. There was a kid playing the other night in my game. I think he's French, possibly of like North African descent, and he did one little thing with the ball. I was like, there's no Irish player that I would ever play with, possibly not Garv, but would do that. And it's like that little bit of flair we just don't have in our DNA.
Yeah,
I'm just imagining Damo like Father Ted and Dougal with a banner saying "Down with flamboyance" outside of football pitch.
I really fear that people have like taken what I said and like. I'm all for expressing yourself. I'm all for enjoying yourself. I'm all for trying things. Good luck to you. I would never stop anybody from trying anything, but there has to be a level of respect, and something like that is just pointless. And you know, I think it's telling that every ex-professional got upset at that, and it's the guy sitting at home watching on TV has gone, "Oh, what's wrong with you?" You know what I mean? Like, Paul Scholes is dead right. When you're in the environment, there's a seriousness to it. Football isn't a joke. It's not funny, you know. There's a time to enjoy yourself, but like not in a Europa League game when it's 0-0 on a Tuesday night. But look, I've said enough on it.
Yeah, weekend pocket.
I'm losing this battle. I don't feel like I'm losing.
No, well, it's a fair point. The ex-professionals, to a large degree, are saying the same as yourself, because they've been in dressing rooms. They know what respect means in terms of the opposition as well. Even when you're winning, or if it's level, you kind of don't want to piss off the opposition. But I guess a lot of people defending Anthony because he's young, and that's probably the way he grew up, playing football that kind of way in Brazil. Someone says, lads, lighten up. It was just a bit of crack. If the pass worked out, we would be saying he's a genius. I don't know. Look, it's divisive. It's certainly one of those. Before we wrap up, lads, very briefly, David Moyes tipping Conor Coventry before this game tomorrow as well. He played Europa Conference for West Ham during the week, tipping him for an Irish call-up, and that's not far away, Johnny.
Brilliant for the 21s. I think it'd be great if Conor could make that step of progress, because I would argue we're still desperately needing a simple in the nice possible way, efficient midfielder who can sort of run a game for Ireland. We haven't had that since Roy Keane.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully he gets the call up.
It's a long way to go.
I think Conor Coventry is a very promising player, but he's more of a Josh Cullen alternative than an addition to a midfield with Cullen in it. That'd be my slight feeling about him. I know what you're saying. I'm not sure. I'm not saying. I know you're not drawing any sort of comparison there, but I don't think he's that type of player, Johnny, necessarily. You know, so.
What does Damien think the old grump though?
I'm just nothing but sweetness and light for the last couple of minutes. He's brilliant. I love him. He's fabulous.
Damien's such a good mood. I love it. Yeah, I love it. Fantastic. Lads, great stuff as always this evening on OTB Football Saturday. Damien, Dan, Johnny, thanks a million as always.
Get yourself to Terryland tomorrow. If you're in Galway, it's going to be raucous.
There you go. The call out from Johnny is there. Just to wrap up the Premier League, Brighton 4, Chelsea 1, 95th minute at the minute. The fourth goal, Pascal Gross, 2 minutes into injury time, so it's actually gone full time. So a very disappointing return to the Amex for Graham Potter. Brentford 1, Wolves 1 is into injury time. It's Palace 1, Southampton 0, 5 minutes into injury time in that game at Sellers Park. The game in front of us, Newcastle 4, Aston Villa 0, 87 minutes on the clock in that game. And of course the result earlier on was Leicester City 0, Manchester City 1, Kevin De Bruyne with the goal in that one. So loads of good stuff on the show today, and I should mention as well, we gave you the chance, Liverpool fans, earlier on, the chance to win an amazing prize. Next Thursday, 3rd November, we're hosting a special off-air event in the Camden in Dublin. It's to celebrate Carlsberg's 30-year partnership with the Liverpool Football Club, where we'll have Liverpool legends John Aldridge and Robbie Fowler in town for a night of football and festivities. So we asked you to name one of the 3 squad numbers worn by Robbie Fowler at Liverpool. You could have said number 9, you could have said number 11, or you could have said the number 23. And congratulations to Barry Jones, who answered that question correctly. So he is the winner for today's prize. Meet and greet, as I said, and tickets to that event next Thursday. Always drink responsibly. Get the facts. Be drink aware. Visit drinkaware.ie. If you missed any of today's show with myself, Johnny, Dan and Damien, loads of great talking points from Football Saturday. You can get the podcast in all the usual places. You'll get it in the OTB Sports app as well. There's also the podcast there of Jermaine Genius, my chat with him. Really interesting stuff from him. World Cup predictions, facing down Roy Keane and plenty else. And Gavin White, the Kerry footballer and first time All-Star as well. So loads still to come. 2 live commentary games on the way for you tomorrow. Joe will be in the hot seat. We'll have the Arsenal game. We'll have Manchester United against West Ham as well. So plenty to tuck into. The paper review as well. We've been Off the Ball Saturday. Thanks a lot for listening, and we'll speak to you soon. Bye-bye.